So the market's still down. The currency feeling a little bit of pressure from the dollar due to heightened dollar demand. How much longer can the situation continue?
Basically, what we saw happen at the end of last week was, there basically was a lot of speculation. We saw dollar demand coming from the energy sector and the commodity sector, especially maize importers. They were given the government gave the green light for anyone and everyone to import maize. It was just not limited to the millers. So this saw a rush for the dollar. So basically, that's what strengthened the dollar and weakened the shilling towards the close of last week. But today, as the market opened, the shilling actually strengthened somewhat against the dollar during the morning session. But towards the close of the session, the shilling weakened yet again.
Right. I mean, as you're saying, monetary tightening is starting to give the shilling some support. But we also know that with inflation unabated, commercial banks are starting to raise their interest rates. When you look at all these factors combined, what's your outlook for managing inflation, taming the shilling, reducing its volatility?
Basically, when you look at inflation, we do expect it to stabilize. Actually, actually, the rise in inflation we expect, the coming month will actually decline somewhat. I think the tightened monetary policy will actually impact the economy, and we should feel some effect on economic growth for this year. As you said, most banks are beginning to raise their base lending rate. So, but inflation should not be a worry. I saw a survey where someone was saying that inflation will go up above 20%, which I think is highly unlikely. Looking at the current scenario, despite the drought, oil prices are not where they were 2-3 months ago.
Right.
Once we start importing maize, I think the food situation should calm down somewhat. So this will impact positively on inflation. We should see decline.
Let's talk about the money markets now that we're seeing commercial banks raising their base lending rates. As we said, the overnight rate is also high up and raised to 8%, and that's helped to prop up the shilling. All of these factors combined, what are we likely to see on the money market side? People do say that, although pressure for business, it should encourage savings and it should encourage people to start investing a lot more in government securities.
Looking at the problem, why we're not seeing a lot more investors coming into government securities, especially medium-term to longer securities, is because of the volatility of rates. No one is quite sure where rates will be within a year, 18 months from now. So basically, but we are seeing a lot of interest at the shorter end. The 3-month T-bill, the 182-day T-bill, the 1-year T-bill, they all have considerable interest. But longer than that, even looking at bank deposits, the bank will give you a much better rate for 6 months than they will for 1 year, because no one is quite sure where the rates will be a year from now. All the volatility, and no one's quite sure, especially going into an election year.
Right.
But the rising of base lending rates, especially if it happens across the board with most commercial banks, we should see this, the credit growth that had witnessed over the last, I'd say about over the last 2-3 years should slow down, which would impact especially the real estate industry negatively.
Let's talk about market expectations for the week, Kenneth. British-American investment company, their IPO to come on stream tomorrow at 9 Kenyan shillings a share. Will the company be able to raise the 5.5 billion Kenyan shillings that they're hoping to do?
This is the first IPO we've had, over in the last almost 2.5 years. We're expecting it to actually bring a lot more interest back into the market, which it's a good thing. As to whether they'll raise the funds, everyone has their opinion. Personally, I think it will be a bit difficult, especially in the economy being the way it is. Of course, we should expect a lot of retail investors will stay away because of, the disposable income has really shrunk. But it's actually pretty good. TransCentury is also later this week. So this is actually good going forward for the market. I think the only way we can go is up.
Yeah, I mean, value for prospective investors, even if it's only institutional. You know, British American is talking about expanding its footprint beyond Uganda and Kenya into markets like Tanzania and Rwanda. They're talking about shaking up the micro insurance sector, bank assurance sector. Are all those sorts of things appealing to prospective investors?
For institutional investors, there are a lot of things you look at. I mean, looking at an example of another insurance company that is regional, Kenya Re, it hasn't worked out quite so well as expected for it. But I think, I mean, you all have your personal opinions. We'll all do our research and analysis and see whether we'll go in for BRITAC. But for TCL, I'd say, I mean, I like the way it's diversified across all the sectors.